Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to our July Char Talk. You'll have to excuse me. I'm going to plug in my earphones, being in a public space. But I want to go over some of the show today. And number one being is that in respect to the speakers, please keep yourself on mute until the question and answer period, in which case we'll be raise your hand, we'll call on you. Or during the event, feel free to write your questions into the chat, and we will be asking the speakers to answer the questions in order which we receive them. And if you're new to the site, welcome to Char Talk. This is the Minnesota Biochar Initiative. We are a nonprofit based in Minnesota, work in primarily Minnesota, but we are a volunteer organization with membership nationwide and now internationally as well. So this is a volunteer group. We bring to you Char Talk. Please take a look at our website. We'll drop it into the chat, and feel free to join Minnesota Biochar Initiative, help support the initiative. If you have a topic you'd like to present on Char Talk, please let us know. Before we get start today, I would just want to go over a couple of rules. Like I said, number one is that we talked about the speaker etiquette going through this. Allow the speakers some, give them the grace and allow them time to answer. I'll be going through the introductions here shortly, but we want to welcome you. We have not seen this is very tremendous response. The recording will be available on YouTube approximately 2 weeks after this event. And also, along those lines, gosh, I'm trying to think of what else I was going to say there. They said it will be available on that time. Katie, are there any other issues that I've missed?
No, Jim, I think you did a great job. I will most definitely jump in with the key links for everyone. We'd love if you want to sign up to receive our newsletter. If you'd love to become a member, I'm just going to wait a little bit more for a few more people to join, and then we'll pop those in. So thank you so much for joining everyone today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for being here. And I was just trying to, sorry, gather my thoughts here. I had them together. But Katie Utos, excuse me, is our administrator for Minnesota Biochar Initiative and the secretary or treasurer for the organization. I'm very, very proud of her. And a lot of the work that you see here today is based on her results or her work. And we also appreciate our members and new people here. One thing we cannot say, hey, we want to join. We can't take your email off of this chat and put it into there because of privacy laws. But feel free to introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and if you'd like other people to talk to you, feel free to put your contact information in there. It's great to see where everybody is coming from. In this work, we have a strong international response today. And again, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn and or join Minnesota Biochar Initiative. Please keep yourself on mute during this organization and respect for during this presentation. So we have one person with their microphone on at this time. But moving. Oh, thank you. But welcome to today's event. We're very pleased to have this presentation. I want to start off by introducing our speakers here. First of all, we have the editors, Dr. Sarah De Jesus Duarte, a globally recognized soil scientist and biochar expert with over 10 years of experience bridging rigorous research and
Jim, you went
I think,
on
Jim,
mute.
you muted yourself.
All right, thank you. How much did you hear?
Start with Sarah's bio again.
Yeah, let's start
Okay,
from the top.
fantastic. My apologies for that one. But Dr. Sarah De Jesus Duarte is a globally recognized soil scientist and biochar expert with over 10 years of experience bridging rigorous research and real-world agricultural impact. She holds a postdoctoral degree from the National Autonomous University of Mexico and a PhD and master's in soil scientists from the University of Sao Paulo, with a research career spanning institutions in Brazil, Germany, and Mexico. As a consultant She works with organizations and development initiatives across 5 continents on biochar applications, sustainable agriculture, and climate-smart soil management. She is also research and development lead at Biosera and co-founder at Super Biochar. Her findings are published in leading academic journals and have directly benefited farming communities around the world. And the other co-editor of this book here is Leonidas Mello, an associate professor of soil fertility.
Patrick Pineda is the co-editor.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. Patrick Pineda.
No worries.
My sincere apologies there. But Patrick Pineda is an entrepreneur with extensive management and operational experience in the founding and early growth of companies in sustainable agriculture, particularly in the development of carbon projects and biochar initiatives. He holds a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics. Through his career, he has focused on the design and implementation of carbon projects with expertise in biochar-based systems. He is founder and former managing director of General Biochar Systems and has served as chief executive officer of the Next 150, where he led the development of innovative solutions to sustainable agriculture and carbon markets. His work combines strategic leadership with operational expertise, contributing to the advancement of scalable biochar and carbon sequestration projects. And we get into our chapter authors, and I'm glad to see such a participation here today. But we have, first of all, we have the legendary Tom Miles, president of TR Miles Technical Consultants, a biomass energy engineering firm specializing in systems that convert wood, agriculture, and urban residues into energy and bioproducts. A fourth-generation Oregonian in wood products and agriculture, he has worked on projects ranging from cook stoves to biomass power plants. Plant designs include provisions for the safe preparation, handling, storage, and transportation of feedstocks and products. His experience with diverse biomass feedstocks led to a focus on biochar for nutrient management and soil carbon. He has hosted biomass energy discussions since 1994 and is a past chairman of the International Biochar Initiative and founder of the U.S. Biochar Initiative, now known as the American Biochar Institute. And we have also with us one of our Char Talk alum, prior speaker, Dr. Suzanne Allaire, an environmental scientist, entrepreneur, and international expert in thermochemical conversion technologies with over 35 years experience in the environmental management and nearly 3 decades dedicated to pyrolysis, gasification, torrefaction, hydrothermal carbonization, and biochar development. She is the CEO of GCA Environment and Sustain Allaire, and has supported biochar, carbon removal, waste valorization projects in more than 30 companies around North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America. Throughout her career, she has worked with governments, industries, investors, research, and project developers to transform organic residues into valuable products while generating measurable environmental benefits. Dr. Allaire is recognized as one of the leading experts in biochar carbon credit project development and has contributed to some of the world's first biochar carbon removal initiatives and has extensive experience navigating the technical, scientific, and regulatory challenges associated with carbon credit development. Her work includes project feasibility assessments, methodology selection, carbon accounting, monitoring and verification strategies, market evaluation, and commercialization pathways for CDR credits. In her chapter, Developing Biochar Carbon Credit Projects, a Simplified Guide, Dr. Allaire provides insights in the development of biochar carbon credit projects, helping readers understand the key steps, challenges, and opportunities within the rapidly evolving carbon sector. And Dr. Allaire is a frequent international speaker, having delivered more than 500 presentations worldwide on biochar, carbon markets, thermochemical technologies, and sustainable resource management. In 2024, she was recognized as the Businesswoman of the Year in Quebec for her contributions to innovation and environmental leadership. And now to Leonidas Mello, an associate professor of soil fertility at the Federal University of Lavras, Brazil. His research focuses on biochar-based fertilizers, and soil fertility management in tropical agriculture systems. Over the past years, he has investigated how biochar can improve nutrient use efficiency, enhance soil chemical and biological properties, increase crop production, and contribute to more sustainable fertilizer and waste management. His work includes studies on nutrient-enriched biochars, co-composted biochar organomineral fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium dynamics, and the use of biochar in such crops as coffee, maize, beans, sugarcane, and vegetables. His contributions to the book closely align with this research, highlighting the potential of biochar and biochar-based fertilizers to enhance soil function while reducing dependence on conventional fertilizers and improving resource use efficiency. And finally, we have the last two here, Kathleen Draper, legend, one of the first people I met in the biochar sphere in 2014. Kathleen has been an active participant in the biochar industry for the past 15 years. She was a board chair of the International Biochar Initiative from 2019 to 2023 and was a board member of the U.S. Biochar Initiative from 2017 to 2024. She focuses on education, research, and consulting on a variety of biochar uses and markets, both in the agricultural space and in composites for the building industry. Kathleen has co-authored two books on biochar, Burn, Using Fire to Cool the Earth, and Terra Preta, How the World's Most Fertile Soils Can Help Reverse Climate Change and Reduce World Hunger, in addition to white papers and peer-reviewed articles. She has spoken about biochar to audiences around the world and has organized biochar studies in Austria, Finland, Nepal, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK, and the US. And last but not least, we have Dr. Deborah Aller, the director of New York Center for Organics Recycling and Education at Cornell. She conducts applied research and leads extension and outreach with farmers on the production and use of organic amendments, including biochar. She began working with biochar almost 15 years ago and focuses her work on practical applications in agriculture. She served on the board of directors of USBI, now ABI, from 2022 to 2024 and holds an MS in environmental science and international development from the University of Edinburgh and a PhD in soil science from Iowa State University. And I appreciate everything everybody is doing here. And Sarah, if you are ready, I'll let you take it from here. Sarah, you're currently muted if you are.
Yeah, I am just fixing it. 1 minute, yeah.
Fantastic. And while Sarah is working on getting the slideshow started here, I just want to remind people that coming in November, we have the ABI North American Biochar Conference in New Orleans. This is going to be a joint event between American Biochar Institute and also the American Biochar Conference. So reserve your time now. If you have local events you want to sponsor, we just finished up the event, the summit in Venice. Please feel free to share that in the chat with your fellow members.
Yeah, and everyone can hear this, can see the slides now?
Yes, we can see and hear.
Super. Thank you very much for everyone be here. Let's start. It's really easy to fall in love with biochar. And from my personal experience, I love biochar. And I'm sure that a lot of you here also love or likes biochar. But in reality, biochar is not loving. If you let, it will break your heart. Many biochar enthusiasts have launched a biochar startup with a great passion. Yet, despite produce excellent biochar, many struggle to generate sustainable revenue. And sadly, a lot of those businesses fail in the first 3 years. So Patrick and I met at the Next 150, a biochar company that achieved major milestones, including multi-year carbon offtake agreements with Shell and Microsoft, and biochar projects in agriculture, mine rehabilitation, and low carbon cements. Although the company ultimately ran away, we were fortunate to learn from this experience and from many talented and inspiring people such as the one who helps us to write this book. That's why you create this book, Biochar, Fueling New Economy in the Developing World. This book brings together the knowledge and experience of leading experts around the world who will be present here today, many of them using recorded video, just to avoid internet issues or any other things. And afterward, we will have questions and answers to them. All of us contributors and editors have one shared purpose: to help you build a successful and profitable and lasting biochar business. Thank you very much to join us as you launch this book, designed not only to inspire you, but to help you to thrive in the biochar economy. So today we have a beautiful program ahead of us. We will start with a brief overview of biochar history. Then we'll talk about biochar marketing. We'll see some of the barriers to promoting the biochar economy, how to face those barriers in a looking biochar economy. We also see different approaches to promoting the biochar economy through agriculture and other applications, carbon credits, and also we see education aspect. And from this standpoint, how can you move forward to promote the biochar economy? So talking about the biochar history is really interesting. Almost 500 years ago, a Spanish explorer, Francisco de Orellana, noted a fertile spot on soil deep in the Amazon jungle, and he attributed it to a natural process such as riverbanks. So jumping into the 1916, a new hypothesis was formed. Those spots were not accidental, but had man-made by residues from indigenous population. So in the early 2000s, two scientists took an interest in Terra Preta. One of them wrote two of our book chapters, Dr. Bruno Glaser, and he wrote for the first time about this soil and attributed to a black carbon the wonderful properties of this soil now called biochar. Those man-made soils are still fertile centuries later and remain as a testament to biochar long-term stability and effectiveness in improved soil productivity. In the last 26 years, knowledge on biochar production has advanced mainly in soil application, within high growth in other end uses over the last 5 years. So these advancements has contributed to increase the biochar markets. As you can see here, so biochar is mainly produced through pyrolysis, representing almost 65% of the revenue. 73% of the produced biochar is applied in agriculture. Asia Pacific dominates the global market with 71%, driven by rapid agricultural sector growth in India and China. However, this reflects legacy production volume built on traditional artisanal production. So how about in terms of premium and certified products? As you can see here, North America and Europe dominates this sector. So here you have an overview of the market size for biochar products and carbon credits. Currently, global market is almost 1 million, and in 10 years is projected to double the value, representing a compound annual growth rate of 13%. North America alone is the responsible for half of this growth, accounting almost 400 million. In the next 10 years, it is projected to be $1 million. The carbon credit today is almost 130 to 200 dollars per ton. And in 10 years, the expectation is to increase this price to 150 to more than $250 per ton. So it is promised those projections, isn't it? But to achieve this goal, we need to unlock barriers of biochar. Let's hear about it with my co-editor, Patrick Pineda, as he talks about the barriers of biochar and how to promote the biochar economy. So welcome, Patrick Pineda.
Hey, thanks, Sarah, and thanks all of you for joining and for all the amazing authors. I guess fundamentally, the market opportunity sounds amazing, but the devil's in the details. And so really, as more companies are coming online, trying to unlock the physical biochar market, the carbon markets, the real questions is how to unlock some of these barriers that can allow the growth of this segment. And so fundamentally, it's a young industry. You know, sometimes I make a comment that it's more of a cottage industry than an industry. We're still in that early growth period. So over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of research. There's been a lot of education. Myself, when I entered the carbon markets and biochar 5 years ago, Kathleen Draper and some of the other authors here were kind enough to share their insights. And so that knowledge share, that education, it's there, but it's still lacking. It has to keep growing. It has to keep permeating across the industry. And the policy, the government support, the government subsidies, the policy mechanisms that can really help unlock any industry, those are still missing at the municipal level, at the state level, even at the federal level. And so education and policy work should really be going hand in hand to look at biochar from a tool as it's been looked at historically on the agricultural side, but on the materials play as well as a low carbon material. And those are some of the underlying mechanisms structurally for the creation of the industry. But really beyond that, at the project level, the projects that are really taking this, day to day, kind of in the front lines, in the trenches, what are some of the barriers that I myself have seen in my biochar ventures and also speaking with other CEOs and other operators across the globe? One of the big ones that we come across today is the understanding and really the documentation and the historic data to try to get to that all-in cost. So most energy projects, renewable projects, even oil and gas projects, they really look at that levelized cost of that unit of production. So when you're all in and you're producing and you're at steady state and you're considering your operating, your maintenance cost, those are fundamentals to any product. And I think a lot of biochar companies are still in that first of a kind discovery period and haven't fully gotten to a place where we understand that per unit economics. That becomes critical for two things. One, the sustainability at the project level, but more importantly, when you think about structuring some of these offtakes for future supply of the physical biochar or of the carbon credit, if you're trying to map it into a price today that you've seen or you've heard or you've seen traders willing to buy at, that might be well below your cost of production. And then that comes into the second piece where as more biochar projects go beyond just the owner operator and that single project level, how to go to several projects, how to really structure traditional project finance as you unroll and deploy more biochar facilities, as you scale this. And so getting to that structured finance, the supply side of the biomass, a lot of people speak about, and that's fundamental. The offtake is fundamental. And these are pieces that go into and layer into this traditional project level structured finance. But the last piece that I think isn't highlighted as much, it's the material specifications. You're producing a product and that spec to be able to do it reliably and repeatably becomes very important when you look at the materials play. And so is it the porosity? Is it the cation exchange? Is it the pH? What's the physical aspect of that product that you're hoping to solve for as you go to market? And then how can you continue producing it within that range? And so I think these are, major barriers that in different ways in different places, I myself and other operators have been trying to solve. over the last few years. And I think these are critical barriers that as we start solving them, how to communicate them, how not to make the same mistakes, how not to spend the same amount of money, but in three different projects to try to get to that place. So that goes back to the education and the knowledge share. Sarah, next slide, please. And this comes back to this idea of why the developing world. So when I first came across biochar, I was working with a carbon developer that was developing all types of voluntary carbon projects. We were looking at reforestation, at methane capture. We were looking to create carbon credits. And biochar was something that was interesting, but this was back in 2021, 2022. Most of the big biochar projects were US, Europe based. Net Zero was already with their first facility in Brazil. And so the question was, can we take the business model, change the geography, and essentially change the cost structure, make it more competitive? And so I was part of the early team that structured and originated ExoMad Green, and that's essentially what they had. They had a geographic location where the waste really was waste. There was no secondary market for the biomass. There was no energy. There was no particle board. MDF industry that was wanting those wood chips, those sawdust. There was no competition for the biomass. And you had a country where you had cheaper labor costs, you had quicker permitting processes. And so essentially you could make a cheaper widget. And instead of spending multiples of millions on machinery from a US or a European vendor, you could take that technology risk and go with a Chinese vendor. These machines were going to be going, far away from cities where maintenance, where uptake, where flying in an engineer was costly. And so you wanted to be able to have something that we always joked, it was essentially the frame of the bicycle, the bells, the whistles, the brakes. That's something that you would add as you learn to use the core technology. And so as we saw with both the modeling of the finances, and then once we broke ground, and then as ExoMad continued their endeavor, you could see how they could really grow in that space. So I think not just from being able to secure these feedstocks at more competitive pricing, at really structural competitive opportunities. The key aspect in the developing world is also the end use. Like these are countries where we're producing the majority of our agricultural products. We're producing most of our food products, our cotton, our fibers. And so to be able to have biochar being produced, but also used, that end use being locally used into these supply chains, it goes beyond just carbon markets or renewable energy. It really goes into this supply chain resilience that can have cascading effects and larger impacts in the developing world. And another piece that for the developing world becomes interesting as a value unlock, most of these countries are now beginning their journey into how they're going to create their carbon markets. What are the policy measures, again, at the municipal level, at the state level, as they look to execute their NDC, as they look to basically create their carbon policies, their carbon mechanisms, and the market mechanisms. So being involved with a project that can have a seat at the table and help guide and form policy, I think that's another area where the developing world is very opportunistic, but also has a higher impact for biochar projects. And mobilizing foreign investment into a lot of these markets has a huge impact. Sarah, next slide, please. And so, as I joked, as I mentioned, this idea of a cottage industry. How do we go from a specialty product where today every project has a different type of biomass, has a different type of pyrolyzer, gasifier, essentially has a different type of biochar, has a different end use because they're hyper local, like most waste management opportunities. How do we go from a specialty product that's local more to a global commodity? And so I think that's where the knowledge on carbon credits becomes fundamental. How do we share a streamlined path to get to a carbon credit so that we're comparing the carbon credit, not the project level carbon capture potential? And then how to use that to, again, unlock this carbon capital, the carbon finance to get these projects to go. And in that area of knowledge sharing, it's not just about posting on LinkedIn a success or a press release. I think the fundamental piece here is also highlighting the failures. What are the lessons learned? What are some of the takeaways? What are things that Project A that's no longer around tried to do but didn't do? What were those millions spent in R&D and in knowledge that can translate into the next project so that instead of spending the million for that, they can spend it maybe on the market side or spend it on getting to a standardized product. We already highlighted this impact on public policy. But the biochar implementation, how to actually use it, that becomes interesting when you look at certain fertilizers or pesticides in the ag or water that's subsidized from an extensionist program, from a training, from a use. I think that's a key piece. How to actually use the biochar once it's made. That's where local government can also support. And then what would I say is the goal? Getting buyers to stop asking, what is this? Or how do I use it? Or what project is this from? And really getting them to compare this on price and spec. And that's where most of our major commodity markets are at today. You have heavy crude oils and West Texas lights, and the cost of refining is different, the cost of logistics is different, and therefore there's a discount on that commodity price. And I think that's where over the next 10 to 20 years, biochar is heading. And that's when biochar becomes a financeable infrastructure play, not just a specialty sale. So we're on this journey. We're unlocking a lot. It is a multi-headed beast, but there's a lot of great people doing a lot of things in a lot of these different areas. Thanks a lot, Sarah. We can go to the next one.
Thank you, Patrick. We certainly learn a lot from you. This was a brilliant overview. So, of course, to get biochar economy, there is a we agree with you, we need to have different approach. We need to advance in terms of agriculture and other end-use application. By creating new products, we also need to carbon credit process should be more friendly, and education and policy needs to be promoted. So to go deeper on each one of these topics, I invite our dearest contributors. Let's start with Leonidas Melo as he talks about how to create a biochar-based fertilizer for agricultural use.
Sarah, we can't hear the video.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let me fix it.
We have some problems especially in tropical areas like in Brazil. Our soils, they are very leached, low in nutrients, and usually acid soils. So we have to correct acidity and provide nutrients through fertilizers. So we usually apply quite a lot of chemical fertilizers. Some nutrients, especially phosphorus, can be fixed by the oxides, or ammonia can be volatilized from these fertilizers, nitrate leaching. So to improve the nutrient use efficiency from fertilizers, we have to improve the soils, and we can do this with biochar. As we know, pyrolyzed biomass, we apply to the soil, and biochar helps to retain nutrient and water. So our chapter is about this. So these numbers here, they are collected from other studies. For instance, we could see that applying biochar, we can save up to 20% nitrogen without reducing the yield or even increased yield. So we do more with less when biochar is also together. This is because the higher nitrogen use efficiency, reduce potassium leaching, can reduce nitrous oxide emissions. The only problem is biochar is usually in those studies shows that biochar has to be applied in high application rates. So usually more than 10 tons per hectare. And this can be a challenge to become feasible, economically feasible. So one idea here that we also brought to the chapter is to combine biochar and fertilizers to produce what we call biochar-based fertilizers, or BBF. Because biochar is a porous material, has cation exchange capacity, so this can control the release rate of these chemical fertilizers, so improve the nutrient use efficiency and reduce also the application rate of biochar. So usually we can get good results with less than 1 or 2 tons per hectare. So this is probably generate the new fertilizers. The future of fertilizers probably can go to these biochar-based fertilizers. We can also call smart fertilizers. And lastly, we discuss in this chapter, it's the role of biochar to improve the water retention capacity in soils, the mechanism behind this, and all this can help, especially in drought periods, challenging periods for crops that stay in the field. So biochar can help this too. So here it's a very brief presentation, but please, to see in more details, read the full chapter. And thank you. We have
Thank you very much, Dr. Leonidas Melo. We are sure that to increase the biochar value, creating biochar-based fertilizers is a smart way to valorize the product. But biochar end-use application goes beyond agriculture. So how to create an unlimited possibility to use biochar? Let's hear from Albert Bates as he talks about carbon cascades, biochar raw material and its multiple applications.
In 2022, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a UN agency, the IPCC, issued a report on the 1.5 degree threshold, whether we're going to cross it or not, what's going to happen when we do. One of the things they said, which I thought was probably the most significant thing in the whole report, was that even if for some magical reason all humans were removed from the planet today and all fossil fuel emissions stopped immediately, all the targets you can talk about all suddenly achieved, it wouldn't matter as far as global warming goes. It would keep warming, and it would keep going on doing that decade after decade, century after century, maybe 6,000 years. We would lose ecosystems. We would have mass extinctions, including possibly ourselves. We would have terrible changes in weather and biodiversity in the oceans, and all kinds of catastrophes would happen, irregardless if all the emissions stopped today. And the only thing we could do, which would really make an effect, would be to start taking carbon out of the atmosphere. To actually reverse climate change, we need to remove the legacy fossil emissions from the last couple hundred years. The trick is the miraculous properties of the element carbon. So carbon was formed in some distant star by some improbable reaction in physics that almost could never happen. And it comes to us by various means, arrives on our planet. Our planet is made partially of it, and all living things are based on carbon and its miraculous properties. One of those properties is its ability to transform into different things because it has allotropes or different versions of itself. And under certain temperatures, pressures, different conditions, you can have a stalk of grass, which is carbon, a dry stalk, and that could be a diamond. Or it could be something that vulcanizes a rubber tire. Or it could be a tennis racket. Or it could be the shell of a car, Formula One race car. It could be, and it has been, made into a snowboard for Olympic competition. And the remarkable thing about a carbon fiber-based snowboard is it's superior to any snowboard ever invented before. But the same properties that you can make a Formula One race car from, biochar can be made to have hundreds of different uses that could be remarkable in how fast they displace major industries that currently use fossil fuels. You can make carbon steel. You can make batteries for electric vehicles. You can make various different forms of plastics that we currently consider to be forever plastics and dangerous, and micro plastics that are going to be in the ocean forever. No, actually, you could make polymers that in the presence of ocean water unzip and become just the raw carbon and other elements again. So this suddenly opens up this vast field. And one of the areas I've been exploring the most, which I think it holds the greatest promise, is biochar as a substitute for asphalt in highways. Now think about that. You have highways that are being repaired or being poured new all over the world every year. And these highways are typically surfaced with something that is the dredges of an oil refinery. It's the black, gooey, dirty, tarry stuff that nobody could sell for anything other than the tar on a road. It's the black bitumen. And it's toxic. When the sun shines on it in the summer months, it off gases, and that air is toxic to breathe. It causes cancer and birth defects. If it rains hard on it, it leaches that toxins, those fossil fuel-based toxins, off into the surrounds, off into the verge of the highway, and then it gets into the food chain. So you're getting these toxins coming off it constantly, and you're adding every time you resurface it or patch a pothole. Well, you could do better just by using plant material that's been pyrolyzed and made into biochar and then made into bioasphalt. And it turns out that that's a superior product. In some cases, it can self-heal its own cracks. It lasts longer, costs less, and can be renewed every year from plants like bamboo that are easy and fast to grow. And you could have every county growing its own highways and producing its own bitumen on the road surfaces that way. Well, how much is that? We're talking in terms of hundreds of millions of tons of that every year. So you start to do the math and you figure out legacy carbon in the atmosphere, going back to the start of fossil fuels and what's still up there, what's going to be up there for thousands of years. There's about 3 trillion tons in the atmosphere. You have to double that because when it goes out of the atmosphere, most of it goes into the ocean. And what happens is the ocean creates a kind of an equilibrium. It won't absorb more than it can handle. So it stays in kind of equilibrium with the atmosphere. And when you start to take carbon from the atmosphere, the ocean gives it back. So instead of looking at 3 trillion tons removal, we really start to think about 6 trillion tons is what needs to be taken out of the process, out of the cycle, and put into hard form, mineral form, the same way it was when it was fossil fuels. Before it was fossil fuels, it was deep underground, a mile underground. And that's the kind of long duration carbon that we really require on this planet at this point in time, not the labile carbon that goes up into the atmosphere and comes around and around in plants every year. So we take it from its plant form, which is the cycling form, and we put it into a mineral form, which is biochar, and that can be in an asphalt highway. It could be concrete in a building. It could be in a bridge or an overpass. It might be a carbon fiber wrap that goes around the columns of a bridge or an overpass. When you have earthquakes, the carbon fiber wrap keeps that column intact. That's the sort of long-term duration materials in our built environment that we need to be thinking about. Forest pavers for streets, so the rain filters through. And those can be made of biochar. Any number of products, and it may have taken hundreds of years for these products initially to be developed from fossil fuels or other sources, and now we're going to be doing that in a matter of decades. And so that's actually a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs, new business startups, general economy of countries, to be able to shift into the carbon circular economy, which is the future of this century and centuries going forward.
Thank you very much, Albert Bates. We have learned a lot for the different end-use application of biochar. Certainly, you can learn a lot by reading his chapter. So now we have provided an end-use application to the biochar. And of course, we are looking to get the carbon credits through it. You know, this is a difficult task. A lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. So how can we develop a biochar carbon credit projects? Let's hear from Dr. Susanna Lyry as she talks about this topic. I ask you, please, to adjust your volume to hear this video.
Hello, I'm Susanna Lyry from Jaca Environment, and I'm very glad to be here today participating to this wonderful book about biochar in the world. And I'm going to talk about carbon credit. What if you can make money and help you finance a biochar project with carbon credits? We know we have to fight climate change. We know we have to manage waste. We have to manage native invasive plants. And all this, we can do it through transforming this waste into biochar. And this biochar doesn't have to just be sold as is. We can have an impact on climate change by putting the biochar into the soil or into the material for construction. And doing this is a good deed for the environment and for having a social economic impact. But how do we do that? We can do it through carbon credits. But carbon credits, it's not an easy task. It has a lot of different steps and it costs money. So how do we build a good carbon project? Indeed, biochar carbon credit project can bring a lot of benefits, which we call co-benefits. It brings money to local community that will help them to make a better crop, wells, all kind of things in developing countries to divert waste into valuable product to increase crop growth and all this kind of things. So we see a lot of benefits all around the world about carbon credits. Carbon credits from biochar is very interesting. It can range $150 to $200 per ton of CO2, but it has a cost. It takes a long time to develop. There's a lot of different steps. You have to have the right data set, the right equipment to measure. You select the standard. The standard will select the auditor, and then you have to prove everything. So there is money involved, there is effort involved, and there is time. So there is a lot of different strategy we can take to develop very good carbon credit projects. Now that you know that biochar carbon credit can bring a lot of benefits in terms of social economy and environmental, and you know that there is money attached to it to develop the product, there is time, and you can get good money for it, like 150 to 100 USD per ton of CO2. Now you have to ask yourself, does your biomass qualify for it? Does your carbon credit qualify, and for how much? Are you willing to do the step, and are you gonna take the opportunity?
Thank you very much, Dr. Susanna Lai. We certainly do the step and take this really nice opportunity. But one of the things that a lot of people is looking is to get education in biochar. So, and because of that, we invite our dearest Kathleen Draper to talk about it. As talks about a comprehensive review of biochar education, including formal and non-formal education and informal modalities. So welcome, Kathleen Draper.
Thank you, Sarah. So this chapter outlines biochar educational resources for various different stakeholders in the biochar industry, from academics that need some sort of baseline training before they launch into their research careers, to biochar producers that come from a variety of different industries, such as wastewater treatment, to forestry, or biochar buyers that need to understand the differences in biochar so that they can order the most appropriate one for their particular end uses, and to the ever-changing actors in the carbon market ecosystem. As Sarah said, education was divided into three types. Formal, which covers third-party training provided from kindergarten to university. Non-formal, which is sometimes called adult or lifelong learning, and that includes conferences, study tours, workshops, etc. And informal, which covers less structured, more self-motivated learning, from books to blogs to educational videos and that sort of thing. Next slide. Formal education. Let's see, maybe the next slide. Formal education resources for biochar are still quite limited. It's likely no surprise that there is no college degree specifically in biochar at the moment. But what is surprising is that there are very few full-length, for-credit college courses dedicated to biochar. Luleå University in Sweden has one online asynchronous course, which is still available. And the University of New South Wales has developed some really good class materials that are embedded in different courses, thanks to my co-author, Stephen Joseph. But that's about it so far. On the K through 12 front, many years ago, NASA actually developed some excellent biochar curriculum, but unfortunately, it was never deployed. So I think, Sarah, if you could advance, I'm looking for the one that starts with non-formal next. Non-formal education is a different matter entirely. The chapter outlines the various opportunities developed by IBI, such as the Biochar Academy and study tours, and other regional biochar groups like Ansbig, where they've developed different workshops and biochar courses for farmers. And then there are the growing number of international regional conferences hosted by different biochar associations every year. And I think Jim outlined the next one coming up in North America in New Orleans in November, but there's also an international one organized by SIPS in Rio later in November. Next slide. Informal biochar education is also thriving. This chapter outlines 11 different books on biochar that have been published in English since 2010, including both academic and more plain language, or what they call gray literature books. It provides information on the different podcasts that have launched, online forums on biochar, including the granddaddy of them all, which is listed here. And I hope you'll all join that one. And various websites from international, regional, national, and subnational groups such as the Minnesota Biochar Initiative. Next slide. Wrapping up the chapter are a few recommendations for what educational materials we believe are still needed to help scale the industry. A few of them are outlined here. After 15 years in the industry, I believe I'm going to echo Patrick's earlier words that education is still a key challenge in scaling the industry. And developing more educational resources could help us dispel some of the myths and misunderstandings that are out there, as well as introduce new buyers and policymakers to biochar's enormous potential when it comes to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and also to improve food security and farmer livelihoods and circular economies and much, much more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen Draper. We certainly learn a lot from this review we have done. And we want to take this advantage, those opportunities to continue learning more about biochar. One of the things that is most difficult in biochar and use is to educate and convince farmers to use our products. So how can we promote biochar adoption in agriculture? To answer this question, we invite Dr. Deborah Aller to talk about biochar adoption in agriculture, from ancestral roots to large-scale opportunities.
Our chapter really takes into consideration the fact that across thousands of studies, we know that biochar positively impacts soil properties, crop production, and can be a part of the bioeconomy of rural areas. However, many questions still remain, like why has biochar adoption not, or why has biochar production and use not been adopted more widely? What are the current barriers limiting biochar adoption in developing countries? And how do we go about increasing adoption of biochar production and use for farmers across the developing world? And one of our key focuses we take is thinking about what is the role of agricultural extension and actually disseminating information about biochar production and application on farms, and what are some of the real world applications that we can highlight. And so we really are focusing with this chapter on emphasizing what are the current barriers to adoption of biochar application in developing countries, and highlighting some examples that we've seen within the literature, and thinking about just simply the lack of awareness of what biochar is and how it can be used and how it can benefit agriculture. Things folks might not think of, like gender and land tenure. Farm size has a big role in limiting adoption as well, and poverty level is another example. And so we highlight some of these critical barriers that we see for why biochar is not being produced and utilized by farmers throughout the developing world. A key focus of our chapter is really providing country level examples when it comes to biochar production and use. And so we provide 3 targeted case studies, or detailed case studies, for 3 developing countries, specifically Kenya, Venezuela, and Brazil. And through each of these country level case studies, we discuss how biochar is being produced and used currently, as we are aware of, opportunities to expand the use of biochar within these countries, and the general benefits that farmers have already been observing through the production and use of biochar. We really round out our chapter by discussing the opportunities to increase adoption of biochar use in developing countries and the role that agricultural extension plays in providing technical assistance to farmers across the developing world when it comes to not just the production, but the actual real world application. How do you go about addressing the when do I apply it? Where do I apply it? How do I apply it? And so we really utilize this chapter to address some of these key questions that are still out there and to try and lower some of these barriers to why farmers are not utilizing biochar currently and how or what can we do to lower those barriers and increase our education and awareness and better support our farmers in the developing world. So we really hope you find this chapter interesting and valuable and provide some insight into some of these questions to hopefully increase biochar adoption in agriculture across the developing world. Thanks very much. Our chapter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deborah Ali. You know, I personally experienced the promotion of biochar adoption in agriculture with Biosora in Africa. Now let's move to see different experience with application of biochar in agriculture and many other areas. So Tom Myers and I have interviewed successful companies around the world that are currently creating different products with biochar. Let's hear from Tom Myers as he talks about biochar, unveil real-world applications and visionary insights from the developing world. Please turn up your volume to hear this video.
Biochar Unveiled, Real-World Applications and Visionary Insights for the Developing World. When you hear biochar, you might think of a black powder you mix into soil. In this chapter, biochar comes to life through people, farmers, engineers, and entrepreneurs transforming their lands, their businesses, and their communities. Their stories show that biochar is no longer a niche amendment. It's already reshaping real-world systems in developing and developed economies. Everyone we spoke with faces a shared set of problems. Farmers deal with depleted soils, unreliable rainfall, and fertilizer prices that can wipe out a season's budget, while cities and utilities struggle with organic waste, polluted runoff, and pressure to cut emissions. Too often each challenge is handled in a separate silo. One project for soil, another for waste, another for water, another for energy. These multiple systems rarely reach smallholders, small towns, or resource-constrained industries, making progress slow and expensive, especially where every dollar and every kilogram of biomass has to work hard. First, agriculture. In Austria, Sonnenerde started with a simple idea. Don't sell raw biochar, sell complete living products. They blend different feedstocks, clean and mineralize them, and always enrich biochar with nutrients and microbes before it reaches the field. Dominic Dunst describes how they scaled from 150 to 1,000 tons of biochar per year by creating targeted products, from black soils for gardeners to specialized feed and manure chars for farmers. Their rule of thumb is clear: never apply naked biochar, and don't spread it thin, place it where it matters most. The result is transformational. Farmers see higher yields and better water retention on degraded soils, and a regional company turns local residues into a portfolio of high-value products. In Brazil, one farmer's experience boosting live stocking rates by around 30% with biochar sparked carbon remove. Instead of asking farmers to become pyrolysis experts, they offer biochar as a service. They come to farms and agro-industries, turn residues like sugarcane bagasse and coffee husks into biochar, and bundle carbon credit generation into the package. Residues that once posed a disposal problem now support better pasture, new revenue from carbon markets, and a practical path to regenerative agriculture. Across a dozen African countries, the Circular Bionutrient Economy Network uses simple kilns, farmer training, and peer-to-peer exchanges to turn market waste and crop residues into biochar that restores tired soils and improves fertilizer efficiency. When farmers see neighbors turning waste into higher yields and income, biochar shifts from experimental to indispensable. Beyond farms, companies in the Pacific Northwest recover char from energy systems, upgrade it, and use it in stormwater filters that strip out heavy metals and bacteria from urban runoff. For city engineers, this turns a carbon-rich byproduct into a frontline tool for clean water and climate mitigation. In industry, Made of Air in Germany treats biochar as a design material. They embed high-temperature chars in facade panels and polymers, storing tons of CO2 in buildings and products while still meeting performance standards. Across these industries, one message stands out. Biochar is transformational, not because of a single miracle use, but because it can be engineered to solve multiple problems: soil, water, waste, materials, and carbon, inside real businesses and public services. Once embedded in robust value chains, it stops being a curiosity and starts becoming infrastructure. So what does this mean for you? If you work in agriculture, water, energy, or urban development, the people in this chapter invite you to stop thinking of biochar as just a soil amendment. When you design around biochar as a strategic material platform, 1 ton of biomass can deliver better harvests, cleaner water, new industrial materials, and durable carbon removal together. As you explore these stories, ask yourself in your context, which waste streams could become the feedstock for your own biochar story? And who do you need to bring together to make that transformation real?
Thank you very much, Thomas Miles. Definitely, we need to think about the new strategies to end-use application. We saw that it's possible to create different end-use applications beyond agriculture. So how can you advance in the biochar economy? You know, every commodity we rely today, such as fertilizer, food, even food, start out fragmented, then follow the same path, standardize the product, anchor demand, financialize the value, and let the market scale it. Biochar isn't early. It's exactly where this market stood before they broke it open. How can you advance in this economy? Doesn't rely in a single revenue stream. So you saw today that diversification beyond agricultural products is essential. We need to also, inside of agriculture, create new products. Let's learn first, talk and second wave movers, then start the journey. Share lessons as we are doing here today and promote education and avoid costly mistakes. And to do it, you have the unique opportunity to learn more, avoid those mistakes. We have here this book. The book is currently today with 25% of discount for this launch event. You can just screen the code and have this discount. We also have here a lot of people, lead authors, people that has a lot of knowledge in this area. Some of them, including myself, are consultants. You can reach out to us here. We have the link for the screen code for the respective LinkedIn. And thank you very much for each one of the contributors that has done a beautiful work. Some of them could not do the presentation today, just such as Dr. Bruno Glaser, Dr. Sanchez, and Dr. Arthur Gross. Dr. Sanchez has done a beautiful work talking about policies. Dr. Bruno Glaser talk about the history of biochar. And Dr. Arthur Gross, he has done a beautiful chapter talking about how to enhance biochar for carbon credit revenue stream. Thank you also for Ivan Gutierrez, who has done a beautiful work in terms of illustration. Here also you have his LinkedIn. And now is the time to invite my co-editor, Patrick Pineda, to say some final words. Patrick, are you there?
Is it okay? Yeah, can you hear me, Sarah? I'm cutting in and out.
Yeah, I can.
All right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for participating. We'll open up to questions in a second. But really, thank you to all the amazing lead authors. I only started my biochar journey 5 years ago. So like I mentioned, a lot of people have been 20 years in research and knowledge sharing. And so I think it's amazing to see how many people turned out for this. And Sarah, thank you so much for your energy and your passion and really kind of taking this to the finish line and convening and bringing so many great thought leaders together. So yeah, open it up to questions. I guess back to Jim. How do you want to organize?
Where's that? In the middle of the
My apologies there for this, and I apologize earlier for having my mic unmuted. I did not realize that. But what we're going to be doing is just checking on the chat here for some questions. And the first one I see here is for $100 to $200 carbon credits to be feasible. What is the minimum ton per year biochar production needed, and how much in the estimate is expected to spend in the certification process? Very good question.
I guess
I did
this is addressed to me.
I did a small
Yes.
answer in the chat that Diego Carcasco asked that question. So just real kind of high level in my own experience, speaking with buyers at Google, at Amazon, at Microsoft, at Shell, BCG, most of the big buyers. One of the big issues buyers have is obviously the diligence process. So a major Japanese conglomerate put out an RFP last summer. They had 200 projects in the RFP that they had to diligence. So for buyers to put the work to diligence a project, it's a lot. A lot of suppliers always bemoan the amount of effort needed to fill out these RFPs. But on the other side, taking it from their point of view, it's a lot of work to vet the projects as well. So if you think about size and scale, obviously the larger your project, the more attention you'll get. So what I have seen in my experience, that 10 to 20,000 tons of corks is kind of the sweet spot. It's where they want to target projects. But beyond just size of initial project, they also want to see pipeline. That's when you get to the end buyers, the direct sales channels. If you go to marketplaces like Carbon Future, Supercritical, those marketplaces, I have seen in my experience, between that 5,000 to 10,000 range is, again, where you get their attention, where they can promote you, where they can kind of funnel you through their buyers. And then you have a lot of these spot buys that are just coming for smaller volumes. The second wave, third wave buyers that are trying to explore, trying to understand, buy small volumes from different projects to understand what's behind there. And then you usually get, the 100 to 200 corks sales and issuance. And obviously, the higher the volume, the lower the price. So if you think of that big spread, the 130 to the 200, depending on where your project is originating and where your buyer is from, that's the range. And the last part of your question, Diego, in terms of cost, as Suzanne said, it's costly because of the hours that go into it. So if you have, a production facility that has GMP, that has some type of ISO management standards where you're documenting your process, you may not need that much additional costs. But if it's on the back end of another facility and you're treating it like a simple waste management, then you might need somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000, maybe $100,000 on consulting. The traditional voluntary carbon markets, they used to charge between $100,000 to $200,000 to develop a carbon project. And so that's why the scale is important to cover the cost of the carbon fees. Suzanne, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Well, I think you covered pretty good, and I agree with you, Patrick. And $100,000, it's freaking to build up a biochar project. Now, with if you already have MRV because it's connected to another facility on those kind of things, so you can save on money. And if you already good in writing project development description of PDD, and so it can save you some time and money. But most of the time, if you work, you have to work with a very specific standard that you have to choose from, then with an MRV as well. And all those services are costly. So a minimum of 5,000 cork will be a very good target. But to reach that, some of small projects they conglomerate together to have a better offer so that it interests the buyers, because the buyers don't want to deal with 10,000 providers. They want only a few providers, so they tend to go toward quite large projects, not necessarily the largest projects, because if they have only one, two, or three providers, is a risk for them. So they want to multiply the providers, but not too much, So when your project is very small because you produce, let's say, with a Kentucky and you don't have so many of this kiln, then some marketplace conglomerate them to make it a bigger project. It becomes more expensive, but you have to find a very nice, a very good firm that can do it for you. And so and oftentimes also marketplace brokers of carbon credits may offer a bundle of different project to a buyer so that it decreases the risk of the buyer and it gives them opportunity to support different projects. So I hope it helped you and it covers your questions.
Thank you. We have another one just came through in the
Thank
chat.
you very much.
See if I can make sure I interpret this right. But biochar is variable due to many possible causes. And how was that handled within the carbon credit process?
You want to answer, Patrick, or I do?
Go for it.
Okay. It's we call it the co-benefits. If I understand correctly, the question is all the good deed that the biochar usage and the biochar production does. It creates it creates favorable environment for the people. For example, in India, I'm writing a book right now, and I interview a lot of people around the globe. And for example, in India, they burn a lot of their agricultural waste after harvesting, and it creates one of the largest pollution that we can find on Earth during this period of time. And so transforming this waste into biochar decrease a lot this air pollution, the smoke, and all those kind of things. So it creates benefits for the people in the surrounding area, in the community, because their health is better and their wealth is better also because it decreases, the needs for fertilizer and pesticides and all those kind of things. So all these benefits that we call co-benefits influence the price of the carbon credits. And that sounds like it sounds a little bit weird, but we can say that this co-benefits, it's like telling a story, and the more compelling your story, the higher the price of your biochar carbon credits. And that's really an interpretation of the buyer. It's how the buyer perceive this story and how it goes with their value. So the better your story and the better you can prove your impact, the economic, the environment, the social impact of your project, the better you will sell your carbon credits. And from comparing two biochar carbon credit project, both let's say both use rice husk or the same feedstock, the same machine, if they're if the proof of their co-benefits is better, they're gonna have a better price for their carbon credits. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. So, we have a hand up from Kathleen.
Yeah, just to add to that, there's also another way to look at it that I think is just starting to evolve, and that has to do with the permanence, which has to do with the end use. So right now, the most of them are looking at soil applications, and they look at permanence, using things like soil temperature and all that stuff. So there is an assumed curve after 100 years that 75% of it might still exist. So you get paid based on that long-term permanence of the biochar. But now with these evolving alternative end uses like putting it in concrete and asphalt, they're having to pivot a little bit. So as an example, Climate Action Reserve originally was only going to allow a 25-year durability for biochar use in asphalt. I think there's been a little bit of pushback on that because the assumption there is a thermal treatment so that the biochar wouldn't survive the thermal treatment, but now they're showing that at least in some places, it's not thermally treated. It's just ground up and used again in another sub layer of asphalt. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more variability depending on what the specific end use is and what the end of life scenario is for that.
Yeah, and it
Thank you.
also depends on the quality of the proof that you bring. The MRV, your data is very, very important. The more they believe in your data, the more they can check your data, the more confidence they have. It also tend to increase the price, the value of the carbon credits. Thank you, Kathleen.
There's some great clarifications on that one, and a lot of these points are resonating here in Minneapolis. As you know, we're making a small scale biochar operation for municipal operations. And the thing about the size of the projects, aggregating different projects to come up to the size where you can market them, and also the narrative, the story behind those credits are really what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis right now. So real life certainly concur with what you have. I have another question here through the chat. How thoroughly has research elucidated the properties of biochar produced from different feedstocks, different temperatures, steam additions, etc.? And separately, is there a plan to develop a standard guide to direct consumers to a biochar project for a specific end use?
I can start to answer this question. Yes, we say, sorry, yes, we have developed some research related with how the biochar, the feedstock behavior in terms of when you're producing different pyrolysis temperature and the characteristics of the final products. So that this is essential to get different end-use applications. So I have done this overview and a deep research with different articles and compile them into a meta-analysis. So I will share the link with you here. In addition to that, yes, we can develop other research in this topic for each biochar, for each specific end use. And of course, those things is directly related with how are you producing? The temperature of pyrolysis directly influence on the porosity of this biochar. So I will handle the link here and also open the doors for other contributors to answer this question.
Yeah, I will jump in if it's okay. The American Biochar Institute is developing standards for. There's one standard that have just been published last fall on methodology for biochar measurements. So this is one thing. It's a ASTM standard for measurement, and we are developing two other standards. One is for the end use, so what's the maximal concentration that can be accepted for different end use of biochar, and the other is for production. It's a production standard. So how can it be produced? What it has to be measured? What has to be declared? And all those kind of things for North America. So you will have some tools there that will help legislator, regulators, and all this kind of people to help even the carbon credit industry to accelerate, the acceptation and the acceptation of the biochar industry on the market. And measurement of the properties is one of the standard that just came out last fall.
So maybe I'll just do a different approach where the research and the theory, it's fundamental, but the real world application and the commercial aspect, I think that's where we are hitting certain walls, and at least from my own experience, biochar in cement, we tested 8 different feedstocks for a major global cement company. 3 worked very well and above what the other comparable materials they were using in terms of the standardized testing for the compression strength and everything else. But the major issue was the color of the cement. When you increase above 2% biochar inclusion in cement, you get very dark cement. They didn't want to sell black cement. They wanted to sell light gray cement. And so it became an issue when you get to commercialization. So I think research, academic theory, testing gets you so far, but then the large scale commercialization and that price point I discussed, that becomes an issue. So Frank made a comment in the chat, and I couldn't agree more. It's education, 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 research, information exchange. But then this is where we need to get to demonstration of real opportunities at every scale. So I think Frank really kind of hits the nail on the head. How to prove that it works so that other people can keep using it. And then another just story from my own uses. With an asphalt company, we were reworking our own biochar facility at the current company I'm working with. We were hoping to get them to mix the asphalt with the biochar. We gave them the research papers, we gave them the case studies, we gave them what other companies were doing. And they said, fine, we'll do it for you, but we won't guarantee the asphalt. And so imagine a major CapEx project getting approved at a major corporate, now testing biochar, but not having the guarantees you would have if they would have just done asphalt. And so I think these are some of the real world risks and the opportunities that we need to work on to how to get over that when we get to these large scale demonstrations. So, just another lesson learned and perspective for those out there thinking of using.
Fantastic point, Patrick. And Kathleen.
Yeah, just to add on to Patrick's statement there, I remember talking to Gerald Dunst from Sonnenerda, who was one of the first to build his biochar production facility with biochar concrete, and he had to personally sign off on the liability because same thing, they weren't willing. But now it's actually being taken up by huge concrete companies, cement companies like Wholesome, and even Cemex is, publicly stating that they're looking for it. And their challenge is consistent, low cost supply nearby where they need it. And the last thing I'll say is that Dr. Lori Tunstall is working on a standard for biochar parameters in concrete, which I think is hugely needed, not just in concrete, but in, stormwater and these asphalt, other uses, because that will give buyer confidence in being able to specify the right kind of biochar for different end uses.
Yeah, Jim, if I could comment, the American Biochar Institute, which is representing North America, Canada, US, and Mexico, has been actively generating technical notes on biochar application for different applications. And if you look at their website, you'll see an excellent guidebook on stormwater applications with a whole series of individual technical notes and for specific applications, including draft specifications for agronomists, engineers, and so on to specify biochar in applications. They're also developing some excellent technical notes on applications into like dairy and other agricultural applications. So that's all work in progress, but it's kind of watch this space. If you look at the American Biochar Institute website, you'll begin to see evolving more practical technical applications based on combination of experience. The stormwater application, for example, or the stormwater manual was the result of a project we started 4 or 5 years ago in the Chesapeake Bay area. And we generated a number of demonstration facilities, and based on the contractor experience, plus the engineers were specifying it and observations and so on, that was the basis, and with collaboration with people like Dwayne Stenland at Minnesota, and the folks at the Washington Department of Ecology. We brought this together into that stormwater manual, which I think you'll find is excellent. But I'll go back to the point that someone made earlier of the need to characterize and understand those important qualities for each application. And we're beginning to get a very good read on that, especially in the microbiome and the rhizosphere, the interactions, what electrical storage capacity. We have new techniques and tools to understand the interaction of the biochars and the organisms, and I think build on the experience that farmers and agriculturists and so on have, and as well in the concrete space. I mean, if you look at the requirements in cement for particle sizing, drive the cost of the biochar up. So there are these balancing acts that we need to do as we learn more about the applications. But I just wanted to point out that there's work in progress, at least in North America, on technical support for applications. And what we're trying to do now in California, for example, is develop a series of strategies that the public organizations, the lending organizations, and resource managers can use to promote the use of biochar.
Well, thank you, Tom. Those are some very profound statements there. And again, just going back between Kathleen and Tom, first ones I met in biochar, and then one of the reasons, 2014, one of the reasons I stuck with it. So good to see my heroes here. And I was very sad to see that Bruno Glasser from Stuttgart was not able to attend, because he's another one of the heroes I put in that category. But some fantastic points. And Martin Baum from Berlin put in a note about Ecoloct and their work in Europe, and they've been doing a lot of work, Holcim and others. And I've had a great chance to have a conversation with them in Venice this past fall. A lot of different things. One of the big things was the different types of biochar and the different effects it has in concrete and strength. And I've asked the Ecoloct to be a participant in Char Talk. They haven't agreed yet, so if you know someone there, let them know. It'll be great chance to get out in front and get this message out. Okay, we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand at this time. So we're near the end of our hour and a half. This is a fantastic set of presentations, and my sincere appreciation to Sarah and Patrick for bringing this group together, writing this book, herding all the cats, and getting the work done. This is going to be a fantastic presentation. Please, again, let us know out there how we can get the book and get this promoted out there. We've had a very strong response to this here. We had over 100,000 people here interested in this Char Talk. We're very largely international. So on these, so a lot of these people can't make it, but will be available on YouTube. But Angelo, I will get to you first, and then Suzanne for some questions here. Angelo, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the organizing the seminar. Unfortunately, I wasn't completely able to follow it because I had another seminar, but I was still online and saw a couple. So I just turned into you, and you were mentioning something about cement and strength. And actually, I'm half Kenyan. Currently, I reside in Berlin, but I'm in the process of implementing the biochar into concrete. And my project is based in and around Nairobi. And so it's at a stage where I'm now looking how to find a certain producer. At the same time, I'm lucky enough to have somebody in this place, which is our cafe in Berlin, staying in this apartment, who is in charge of the credentials that it requires in order for it to get concrete, certified. So yeah, fast forward, I'd just like to connect. Can we get like an index of participants or something? Because I couldn't really participate, but I know I missed, and I gave out my LinkedIn address. So I'm trying to catch up.
And Katie, do you want to comment on we have some legal restrictions on the list as far as contacts go from some European law. Katie, do you have any context on that?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So, Angela, this will be posted on our YouTube and on our website. So we'll pop that link in there again, but you'll be able to rewatch it and catch everyone's names that participated today, and then you can follow up with them directly from there.
And also, Angelo, if you haven't yet, I strongly suggest, encourage you to connect with Katie through the Minnesota Biochar Initiative email or website, and we can get you onto the recurring list here that has a larger list of people to connect with through MNBI. We have about 600 people currently on that list who receive messages about Char Talk. Also, I know, Suzanne, you're patiently waiting for the next one. But Angelo, I know we had Dr. Cecilia Wandig in Nairobi here who's interested in a lot of the same things that you are here. And hopefully you two have a chance to connect here. And that brings us into one last thing is next month, we're trying to put together a Global South based Char Talk. And we're hoping that we get Dr. Cecilia back in the saddle and others to talk about biochar in Africa. And so if you're looking at participating in that, please let us know. We're trying to work hard on that, getting that follow-up to this thing. And Sarah has graciously agreed to participate. And Kathleen, we'd love to see you there as well as participating with all your work. And maybe Lucia in Italy as well. A lot of her work has been based in Africa. Frank, thank you very much, Frank Stree, from the notes that you put in the chat there. Always good to see our friends. Now you're in Tasmania, is that correct? Okay, so we're getting that reach. But Suzanne, I believe you had a statement.
Well, I just really want to thank you very much, Sarah and Patrick, for this hard work, organizing everything together. It was a very long journey. It was like a year and a half of work for them, and for us to write the papers was not as much. And so the idea was really good, and I hope this will really helpful for everybody, not only in the global south, but for everyone in this world. So thank you very much for inviting me to contribute. I'm very glad about it, and congrats to everybody, and thank you everyone for being here today, and Jim and Katie to organize it today.
Well, we really extend a thanks to all the contributors here today and participants who are out here. It's great to see you. If you're first time here, I hope to see you back at Char Talk in the future. Get on our list, check out our website. If you'd like to join, we'd love to have you join the organization and continue to get this message out. But I want to thank you very much, Sarah and Patrick, and the contributors for an excellent presentation, series of presentations, great questions, a lot of information. If you'd like to see a topic on Char Talk, let us know. If you want to talk on Char Talk, let us know. There's a lot of people here who are alumni of speakers and also people, potential speakers. So let's get some interesting topics. Continue on this thing. Go out and get your copy of the book. And I want to thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week. And I hope to see you next month at Char Talk. Our normal time is third Friday of the month. Noon Central Time, but UTC -5. But we'll adjust as needed. But very special Char Talk, a lot of interest. We can't wait to see it. We'll let you know when it comes out on YouTube. And Katie, thank you very much in advance for the efforts that she does behind the scenes to make this magic happen. So with that, I really appreciate it. If there's nothing else, we'll let you go and have a great rest of your week. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank